Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Kageyama, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to Be Your Own Hero. I'm a stage 4 prostate, bone, and lung cancer patient, been slash survivor, been dealing with cancer since late 2020, early 2021, doing very well, very happy to be here in Texas. And Rebecca and I were shooting a part two, and we live in different parts of the state. And we were just talking about how different our weather is, and we've had a bunch of rain, and she hasn't had any, and we're like, okay, that's typical Texas. But in fact, she said she's telling me that her weather is going to be probably close to 90. I'm like, wow. We have beautiful weather. It's really crystal clear. I think we're in the low 80s, if I'm not mistaken, but we live in uh, different parts of Texas, but it's all good. But anyway, I am so excited because we're gonna shoot part two here of our interview. And what I'd like to do at this time is introduce my guest once again, Rebecca Esparza. And Rebecca, let's kind of summarize, tell us again who you are, kind of
Sure,
summarize what we talked about real quickly in part one, and then we're going to get into totally different subjects. Go ahead.
sure. I'm Rebecca Esparza. I live in Corpus Christi, Texas, and on Thanksgiving Day 2001, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And because I didn't have health insurance, it moved to stage 4 really fast. Um, Made it through by some miracle. I still believe in miracles, and that's one of the reasons why I share my story to let people know that miracles still happen. 5 years cancer free went by, and I thought I was in the free and clear. But then I got thyroid cancer as a second primary cancer. So, one doctor had told me that two primary cancers before the age of 40, and your likelihood of getting future cancers goes up. So, I've been very vigilant since then, as well as very active as a cancer advocate.
That is great. So, your first cancer was ovarian cancer, and as we mentioned in part one, you went in for surgery, and all of a sudden, you went in for fibroid tumors, correct?
Yes.
Went in for fibroid tumors, and then when you woke up from the anesthesis, all of a sudden you had a radical hysterectomy. I mean, that's got to be the most shocking thing. You know, you go in for one thing and you think it's not that big a deal, and then all of a sudden you wake up and it is a monstrously life-changing deal. So I can't even imagine where that puts you as far as your frame of mind. That is just that is probably the craziest thing I've heard ever of somebody who's gone under anesthesia and waking up to something like that.
It was heartbreaking for sure. I was only 30 years old. In my mind's eye, I was waiting to have kids till I was financially secure to where I could afford them. So I was waiting into my 30s to have kids, and that choice was taken away from me, thanks to cancer. But at that moment in time, I was more worried about the cancer, and turns out I had many more years to come, to let that sink in about not having kids.
So how has that affected you? Uh, at some point, I'm sure you were able to reconcile that in your mind. How long did that take? Or I'm sure something is still lingering as far as that goes, but
Well, absolutely. It will never leave me. The sorrow will never leave me. I will never be the same. But just like anybody else dealt with, some crummy, news or crummy hand in life, you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you move on, and you deal with it, and you find ways to cope. There's some days that are really sad, sadder than others, and there's some days where I feel like I'm on cloud nine. Like, my sister is been and very kind enough since the very beginning when she started having kids to share her children with me whenever I wanted. So I'm proud to say that I'm an auntie plus one. I go above and beyond because I feel like they're my kids too, and my sister tells me that too. You're their second mom, so that really helps that pain lessen, knowing that, yeah, a part of my DNA is in those children. So, yeah, to a certain extent, uh, yeah, I'll be your second mom. And that has been very, very heartwarming, and that's helped me get through. But yeah, it's been a process. I would say it took me a good 10 years before it really sunk in, and I realized that, okay, it's not happening, and I'm okay with that. Because I have a strong faith that whatever happened, happened according to God's plan, and I have to be okay with that.
That's beautiful. I love that. Absolutely love that. At one point, did you reconcile the fact that you're still alive? When did that um, come into play when you realize that, the most important thing is you're still alive and you're still on this earth to do, uh, you know, whatever it is you're destined to do?
Sure. I want to say that sometimes yeah, I still wake up with that kind of, I don't want to say shock, but um, amazement and wonderment that, wow, I woke up and I have air in my lungs and I can walk and get out of my bed on my own and I can dress myself. And what a blessing this is that I'm still around. And it's more important to me to do great things for others because I feel like I've been given a blessing in the fact that I'm still around. And unfortunately, it's not the case for a lot of fellow cancer advocates that I've known throughout the years, ever since 2003, when I really started immersing myself in the advocacy world. I can't even begin to count how many friends that I've lost in different support groups, advocacy efforts. It's just heartbreaking, probably in the hundreds at this point.
You've
And
been a, you've been a long time survivor,
yeah,
so I mean I've experienced quite a few, but nothing compared to
yeah.
you because of your longevity in this world.
It's a grief. It's a grief process that I've had to still to this day, when I still lose friends to this day, have to reconcile that I'm thankful to be around, but I'm sad to lose my friends. But by the same token, I know that they wouldn't want me to, be hurting because of their loss. To honor them, I continue doing what I do because just because they're no longer here on this earth doesn't mean that I can't still share their stories. And I
That
will
that
continue
is
sharing their stories until I no longer have breath in me.
that is fantastic, and my hat's off to you for doing what you do. Um, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So thank you. We
Sure.
need more people like you to do that, and the more of us that do that, the better it is going to be for everyone. Because what this channel is all about is providing hope and inspiration to people, and that's what it's all about. Because cancer patients or any people with any type of a health situation need to know that there is hope. Because without hope, what do you really have? If you don't believe that there's hope, then what do you have to go on, to move on, to move forward? And so what you're doing is absolutely fantastic, and you're a treasure to this world, no doubt.
Oh, thank you.
So let's talk about we've talked about your in part one and here about your first bout with cancer. So then as your life is going on, uh, let's pick up where we left off
Sure.
and talk about things moving forward.
Sure. Um, well, I was at an advocacy event for the American Cancer Society. You've probably heard of Relay for Life. And
Mhm.
it was that time of that ceremony where they dim the lights throughout the whole stadium and light luminarias around the running track. And I was walking from one tent to the other, and I tripped over a stake in the ground from one of the tents, and I hit my head and I passed out. And when I woke up, EMS people were cutting my jacket because it was kind of cold. They were cutting my hoodie jacket that I was wearing and putting me in traction, putting an IV in me, and I was like, "What the heck?" And find out a head CT later. I had nodules in my thyroid. The doctor said it's probably nothing. Everybody's walking around with nodules in their thyroid. It's a pretty common thing. But the nurse printed out stuff on thyroid cancer for me. And she said, if I were you, I would go get checked out. And I just thought, whoa, okay. She printed out stuff from WebMD about thyroid cancer. So I talked to my gynecologist at MD Anderson, and they said, well, if it makes you feel any better, come on over. We'll do a fine needle aspiration. I'm sure it's nothing. 80% of the folks out there, general public, have nodules in their thyroid, and they're perfectly fine. They're benign, but we'll do it. So they did, and it was thyroid cancer. It was papillary thyroid cancer that had spread to my lymph nodes already. And it was a complete shock. And yeah, when the doctor told me that two primary cancers under the age of 40, my likelihood of getting third, fourth, fifth cancer as I age, he said, you're going to live a long life, but you're going to have multiple cancers throughout your life. And in some way, that was a little bit worse than the ovarian cancer diagnosis. I was heartbroken to realize that I'd be living this with this for the rest of my life.
So when you got that second diagnosis, were you mentally better prepared the second time than the first time?
Yes and no. Um, I was cautiously optimistic that it was nothing because everybody had been telling me, oh, lots of people, even the research I'd done on the internet, yeah, a lot of people walk around with nodules on their thyroid and they're nothing. But a little voice in the back of my mind was thinking, well, you've had cancer before. I wonder if I have it again. And I was prepared to a certain degree, but I wasn't prepared in finding out that my chances have increased because I'd had two cancers now, and be under the age of 40 is kind of young to have two separate diagnoses that have nothing to do with each other. And yeah, I was in shock, and I was pretty heartbroken that I had to deal with everything all over again.
But as far as getting your mind set to fight a second battle,
Mhm.
how did that go for you? Was it easier to shift into that fighting mode again as opposed to the first time when you're because the second time you have a lot more knowledge than the first time, no doubt. And
Sure.
and so I think for most people the fear is less because you've already dealt with it a first time, even though it's a different one.
I I think I was prepared in a certain amount. There were also many more support system organizations around in 2008 versus 2001. I started to work with the Lance Armstrong Foundation. They were um, constantly espousing cancer survivorship issues and things like that. So it did. I was in a better place just because cancer was in a better place. There were more
Mm.
people talking about cancer survivorship, long-term survivorship, you know, talking about the things that cancer survivors need help with, not just getting rid of the cancer, but also the mental health aspect of having cancer. And that's something that totally was not talked about in 2001. So all of a sudden, we had fast forwarded a lot in that short amount of time, and thankfully, I was able to grab onto that. But yes, another thing that really helped is that thyroid cancer is extremely treatable. It has like a 90 something percent success rate once you have the radiation therapy treatment to get it eradicated. So that was something that I was hanging on to, that I was going to be part of that 90%. And at the end of the treatment cycle, when I was about to have the radiation therapy, they do a full body scan to see how much radiation they're going to give you. And when I did the full body scan, no cancer came up. So I did not have to have the radiation treatment. That was amazing.
It's always good.
Yes, I was floating when the doctor told me that. He said, "Guess what? There's no cancer to radiate. You're not going to have the radiation treatment." I floated out of that office, and I'll just never forget his words to me: "Go out, have a great life."
So
You,
did you have surgery for it or
yes,
for the second?
that's
Oh, okay.
the second one. I had a surgery in the summertime, and he wanted it to give it about 4 or 5 months to heal from that, and then do the radiation therapy because he said papillary thyroid cancer is the most common type of thyroid cancer, and it's extremely slow growing once you get it all out. So there wasn't an immediate need to do radiation therapy right away, and the surgery took it all. They took 45 lymph nodes. And my parathyroids were connected to my thyroid glands, so they had to take a couple of my parathyroids, which I still have calcium issues to this day. But at the end of the day, I did not have to have the radiation treatment, and that's a huge blessing because that has extreme side effects on its own. So I feel very blessed that I did not have to have the treatment itself, that the surgery took care of everything.
What role has your faith played in your cancer journey?
It's a huge role, a huge role. Um, I've I learned early on with the ovarian cancer to give it to God because He wanted to take it up for me. But I was in the beginning, I felt like I was fighting the chemo. I wasn't letting the chemo do its thing. I was so scared and terrified and always a bundle of nerves. I feel like I wasn't giving the chemo, letting the chemo do its thing with my body. And then after a while, I realized that I just needed to hand it all over to him and that he was going to take care of me and that I was at peace. I learned to be at peace with his will. And if his will was for me to not be on the earth anymore, I was going to be okay with that. And that took a lot of me to do that because I didn't want to leave my family. Um, I felt like it was so unfair to burden my parents with burying their oldest child at the age of 30. So, by the same token, I fought with every ounce of my being, but I had to let go of some of that and trust in God that what His will was going to happen. And as soon as I did that, a huge weight lifted off my shoulders, and I just was relaxed and calm. And I just let the chemo do its thing. And then by the fall of 2002, I was in remission.
You talked in the last interview about your father and the role that he played, but also talk about your mother as well, the role that your parents have played. And this is an important thing because if you have family and you have friends who support you in your cancer journey, it just makes you that much stronger because it takes, other people to, help you along the way, not only with, the things that you need as a cancer patient, but also mentally. Why don't you talk about that?
Sure. My mom was an amazing help. She was the one that would tell me, whatever you want to eat, I will make for you. I don't care what time of day it is. If you're hungry at 2 o'clock in the morning, wake me up and I will make you whatever you want. Um, the the support that she was there with. She couldn't go with me to every treatment because she was still working a full-time job. And she was the
Wow.
only one earning something at that point because I couldn't earn anything. I was on indigent care. I couldn't bring any money in. My dad was already retired. He was ill. He was disabled from the Vietnam War, so he couldn't work. So my mom was the one that held everything together but
Wow.
still going to work and making sure that there was still food to put on the table, lights to turn on, and things like that. So um, I can't imagine how tough that was for her baby to be going through things that she was going through, and she wasn't able to be there because she had to be at work earning money to keep everything together. So that must have been difficult in itself. Um, yeah, everybody had their role. Again, my sister, one of the first things she did was call the American Cancer Society and had a packet of stuff sent to me about ovarian cancer. Robert, my fiance, he shaved his head as well as my dad for me when the time came where my hair was I had put it on a ponytail and I kept it in a ponytail for about a month because I was afraid once I pulled the ponytail out that all my hair was going to come out and it did. And at that point I had to shave my head and both my dad and Robert decided to shave their heads with me and I just felt like after that happened, that was like a turning point. That's when I started to let things go and stop being so nervous and afraid, and just kind of relaxed a little bit and thought, I'm gonna make it through this. This is something that I'm gonna make it through.
That is phenomenal because one of the most important things that I learned during my cancer journey was how incredibly powerful a person's mind is. And my whole body was compromised because I was so weak. I was down to 122 pounds. I could barely
Mhm.
walk.
Yeah.
But the one thing that was not weak and actually got stronger was my mind. And so I thought to myself, that's what I really have to use. And I have to figure out a way how to use it efficiently in order to make things better, make my journey better, and so every day I used my mind, and it was like, it blew my mind because every day I woke up and I thought, you know, that my mind is still good. It's still strong. In fact, it's stronger than ever because like when they say when you lose a sense, your other senses are heightened. You lose
Hmm.
your
Yeah.
sight, you lose your hearing, and other things are sent. And I didn't realize that that would be the case with your mind when your whole body is compromised. But that was the case in my situation, and I'm so thankful that I came to that realization and really used my mind to help me in my journey.
Sure.
Let's talk
Yeah.
about your advocacy.
Yeah. Well, since 2003, just dove right in. One of the major, huge events that I did right out of the gate was something called Celebration on the Hill with the American Cancer Society. American Cancer Society was pivotal in my cancer advocacy. They invested a lot of training in me. I was chosen for several things to do with their sidebar organization called the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network, where they mobilize as a very grassroots level folks from every major city, major area in the United States, and they rally them together and send them to Washington, D.C. to talk to our legislators to make cancer a national priority. So in 2003, they had a really amazing event called Celebration on the Hill, where there was I think there were 20,000 cancer advocates on the Capitol Hill. And that really opened my eyes about what I could do and our voice as survivors and our caregivers, because our caregivers came along as well. And it was, you know, it was hold me back time because then I was like, whoa, I need to do this. And ever since then, I've probably been to the hill at least. I stopped counting a couple of years ago, but I'm estimating at least 70, 74 times since
Wow.
2003 because some years I went 3 or 4 times with different organizations. The year I got thyroid cancer, I went to Capitol Hill for it was either Live Strong or One Voice Against Cancer a week, about 4 or 5 days after my thyroid cancer surgery. Because I remember utilizing the wheelchair service that they do at the airports. And I didn't want to do that, but I got special permission from my doctor. He said, if you agree to be wheeled around the airport, I will let you go. So I was like, okay, fine. I'll be wheeled around the airport. And it was super
The
important
airport,
to
that
me.
could be a blessing.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, so
I mean, even when healthy, and I've been in the airport,
true.
sometimes you wish, man, I wish I
Yes,
had a wheelchair.
exactly. Yes. So, yeah, it's just something that's been super important to me because I'm still here. I'm thankful, and there's others that are not so fortunate to still be around. But that doesn't mean that their stories have to end there. I'm still sharing the stories of folks that I grew to love, especially my ovarian cancer fellow advocates. I would get really, really close to them. And it's a hard thing to have been around for so long and lost so many friends. But you never forget them. You never forget them, and you share their stories. And you know, somewhere up above, they're smiling and saying, thank you for continuing on because they were passionate about the same thing. And they were doing it for those that went before them, and they had lost friends along the way. So it's a domino effect, and we all advocate for each other.
Talk about survivor's guilt and what you know it to be and what your thoughts are about it.
It's a real thing. I had it. I've had survivor's guilt. But it's one of those things where you have to move on beyond that, and not let somebody else not being there anymore affect you physically and emotionally and mentally because that will really it can affect you physically. And that's the last thing that our friends would want, our friends and family. So you just have to set it aside and realize that um, you still have a purpose, you have work to do here on earth, and they would want you to stay active and do what's best for you. Maybe you need a break from advocacy. I've taken short little breaks where, it's one of those things where, sometimes you get stretched a little thin and you go to too many things. And it's good to take a little bit of a you know hiatus and to do stuff for yourself. And sometimes I've noticed that I've stopped doing hobbies or things that interest me outside of cancer and things like that. And that's the time to step back and realize, hey, let's start doing hobbies again that, take your mind off everything related to that. So it's all about, nurturing your own well-being to make sure that you are, keeping yourself healthy. And, having that survivor's guilt is not a good place to be. So I had to learn to overcome that and to be more of somebody that honors those that we've lost instead of staying in the mourning phase.
So I'm correct me if I'm wrong. I'm assuming that you're going to do what you're doing moving into the future. But do you have any other goals for yourself as far as your cancer advocacy and what you want to do in the future? Like, do you want to write a book? Do you want to, whatever it may be? Do you have any other plans?
Sure, definitely. I've been on the 20-year plan of writing my book. It's taken a long time. It's just an emotional place to go, and I haven't been really enthused about going through some of that stuff. But funny enough, recently one of my latest advocacy efforts, it's being a support group lead on a new online cancer support group called Presently. And doing that has opened my eyes to a bunch of unresolved things from my first cancer. So it's one of those things where I realized that there's a bunch of healing to be had when you go through some of that stuff that's unresolved. So writing the book would be the perfect way to go through all that stuff. And there's a lot that I still need to go through, but I've it's pretty amazing to say that at 53 I'm still growing, but I am. I
That's what it's all about. You know,
yeah,
I'm a little bit older than that, actually a little older than that, and I'm that's what keeps us alive. That's what keeps us the fire burning, is
totally.
things that we look forward to. And I mean, I look forward to each and every day for doing a little bit more, getting a little bit better. Um, and otherwise, what are we here for, really?
Sure. Yeah,
I mean, we're here to help the world become better, help ourselves become better as well. So, I mean, what you're doing is absolutely fantastic, and my best wishes to you in the future and what you do. Do you have any final thoughts of what you'd like to leave our audience with, Rebecca?
there's always hope. There's always hope, even when things look their gloomiest, their lowest. Um, when my dad died in 2010, I thought that was the end of the world. And I realized that dad would not want me to feel like that. He would be so proud that I was still alive and kicking, especially after they told me I wasn't going to be around and to start saying my goodbyes back in 2002. Um, he's the one that taught me the mind over matter, former Marine, it's like punish the pain type mentality. And I took it to heart, and I still use that today to get me through the humps that I still experience today. So there's always hope, and you can stay down. You could be down, have down days. I would own them. I called when I was sick with the first cancer, I called them my game show network days because I like to just watch Game Show Network like for hours and sleep, watch Game Show Network, then sleep, watch Game Show Network, and sleep. So those are my Game Show Network days. But then you get up, you get back up. You have a bad day and you get up the next day. Even if you don't have anywhere to be, you get ready, you get dressed, you get all made up. The worst thing you can do is just sit around, mope around, and feel sorry for yourself or feel sad. You got to go out and do stuff and also laugh at yourself. Laughter is the best medicine. And I'm not talking about a ha ha or an LOL via text. I'm talking about those hearty laughs that you have from your belly that you just like explode into laughter and they hear you on the next block. Those kinds of laughs. And that's another thing that my dad taught me was that laughter is the best medicine.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. One final question. So, how many nieces and nephews do you have from with uh, through your
My
sister?
sister, two nephews. One just turned 14 and the other just turned 21.
Okay. So, obviously, you've helped to raise them.
Yeah.
And what kind of message do you leave to them as the most important thing that you as an aunt could give them?
God is always first. Have faith, be kind, be generous. Be generous with your time, with your money, and don't take any day for granted or anybody for granted.
Love that. Very, very simple, but so powerful. Absolutely incredible. And I just want to thank you for just this precious time. It's been an honor for me to get to know you a little bit and to hear your story. And congratulations on all the things that you do, and you know, keep doing it because you're doing absolutely amazing. And yeah, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for
Mm.
sharing this time with me.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I'd like to thank all of you out there. I mean, we've talked about some very, very important things, uh, to just anybody's life, It's so important that we tr our time on this earth is our most important, precious commodity. Once it's gone, it's gone. And that should be revered and honored and treated and utilized to the very best of our abilities each and every day. And so, with that, I want to leave each and every one of you. Have a very blessed week. Make the most of your time because our time is so precious down to the very second of each and every day that you are awake. And so, I just want to thank you. Please like, subscribe, make a comment in the comment section of this video, and we will see you next week on To Be Your Own Hero. Thank you so very much. Bye bye.